Well, hello there. We're going to do a little Pro Tools 101 test review. I have this document here called the Pro Tools 101 Certification Review Cheat Sheet. It contains all the most difficult and nerdy questions that you could encounter on this 101 certification exam. So these are some. I'm going to start out with some more difficult questions that are a little bit more obscure, related to this distinction between two types of Pro Tools sessions or projects. So check this out. What we can do is you can create a Pro Tools session, which is what you might be used to. It stores it locally. It's in a folder. It has a Pro Tools session file. Audio files are there. That's what we're used to. There is this other type, which is a project, which is collaboration and cloud backup, which means that it's stored on external server managed by Avid. You have to log into your Avid account actually to access this. So I had to log into my Avid account. I'm signed in to get a jump on things here. And look at the icon looks a little bit different. So this isn't really stored locally on your computer. It's stored in the cloud. I just named this one Cloud Session Test. And I'm going to open this up right now and show you what's going on here. And just to give you a background on some of these questions. So if you see questions like which of the following can be done using the save as new version command? Well, if I open up this session here, for example, this is a Pro Tools session, that command doesn't even exist. This is just a session that I opened up recently, just kind of a random session here. Save as new version, file, save as new version is not even there because this is a project. Look at the interface up here. It's very different as well. Very different up here. And now I'm going to close this up. And I'm going to open up another, a recent one, my cloud session. Here we go. Open this up. And look at, oh, this is all new up here. Check it out. All this stuff is new. So this is kind of how you upload stuff, download stuff to the cloud. Here's your disk space that's used. You could add collaborators. Like let's say you wanted to have your friend overdub drums or something in a different city. You could give them access to the session. They could upload their tracks. You could chat with people, all this stuff. You don't need to know all this stuff. But related to this one particular question, which of the following can now be done, can be done using the save as new version command? File, there it is. Save as new version. It's basically just like a save as, right? It gives you a new ability to save that. So let's go through these questions now. Now that we know what a Pro Tools project versus session, right? Project is cloud-based. Session is what we're used to. It's stored in a local hard drive. Second question here. Which of the following is an advantage of using project documents in Pro Tools as compared to session documents? Well, as I was just saying, the project, it's backed up on the cloud. You have to sign into your Avid account. You can collaborate with other people. Those are the two main advantages I can think of right now. Things like that. So otherwise, the Pro Tools session, you can't collaborate with it. It's not automatically backed up. Things like that. So keep that in mind. Which of the following can you use to create a Pro Tools project document with cloud backup? And that would be the dashboard, right? So let me close this up. Here's my Pro Tools project. Let's close this up. And so if I make a new session to do Command N or Control N on a PC, here's the dashboard. See the dashboard word here? Dashboard. So here is where you choose which of the following, which of the following can you use to create a new Pro Tools project document with cloud backup? That's the dashboard. It's this new splash screen. So here's just Pro Tools with nothing open. I go File, Create New. That brings up the dashboard where you choose the bit depth, sample rate, your I/O, if your files are interleaved or not, all that good stuff. And here's the checkbox to back up to cloud. I'm glad we looked at this. So if we go to local storage, it's only locally saved, right? So it's not collaborative. It's not backed up, all that good stuff. Save as new. We saw that command. It's like a variation on this question right there. Save as new. Save a cloud-enabled project document under a new name. I think it's like a save as for cloud-enabled documents. So save copying, now this is one that is used for a regular Pro Tools session. So let's open up a Pro Tools session here. Here we go. So let's do a recent document of a recording session I did. Yeah, let's just open up. Doesn't even matter. Actually, that one won't be there, but let's see. Recent. This one is here. I know it's locally stored. I'm going to open this up. So now the question is, what is save copying? The save copying command can be used for all the following except what? And let's look at what it can do. So save copying is a great way. It's right here. File save. This is a regular Pro Tools session now, not a project. So we're used. 90% of the things we're going to be doing are going to be in session. So save copy in. Let's look. So what we can do. We can save to an early version of Pro Tools. Check. Right? It can go way back to Pro Tools 5, 6, 7, or the latest one that it's installed. I can save it as a project even. We know what a project is. It's a cloud-based thing. So you can save all these different versions of Pro Tools. It's great. You can have backwards compatibility like that. I could save a whole new folder with a different bit depth or sample rate. Right? Let's say I wanted to have someone record and they want to, their interface only goes up to 48K, but let's say I'm at 96, or I want to upsample, downsample, what have you. I can change the sample rate, bit depth, all that good stuff, if the files are interleaved or not. And then you can copy all the files. So what I really use save copying, to be honest, even though you can do all these fancy things, the main reason I use it is to make a whole new folder of Pro Tools. And why would you want to do that? We've all had file management issues where, let's say you download some files from the internet and they're in your downloads folder, and then you have other files on a hard drive, and then you're on your desktop. All these files are over the place, and you move the session somewhere to a different studio, and all those files that were in the downloads or your desktop or something are now not linked correctly. They're broken links, and they show up as like blank audio files. Like the audio files don't appear like this. So what you can do, I use save copy and primarily for the audio files right here. I'll copy all the audio files and the video files like this, and then I will just save the entire Pro Tools session to a new folder. It will pull whatever the audio files are linked correctly, like let's say they're in the download, let's say they're in the desktop, let's say they're in an external drive. It'll put them all in one folder and say, here's a nice clean folder with all the files copied over to a new folder. So it basically just duplicates your whole session folder, but it ensures that the links are good of all the files. So this is a command you want to do if you have file linking problems. Like let's say you went to another studio and you have all these linking problems. Well, you can go back to your original session where the files are linked, and you can do this command. That's primarily what it's used for. So now we know it can be used for all those things, but you cannot convert a session file to a template file. So there's no template thing in here at all. So a template is something totally different. File, save as, template is right here. And templates are great. I wouldn't do this one with a template, but let's say I was going to do another recording session where I had, I've got 2 guitar mics here, and a guitar bus, and a bass DI, and a drum overheads, and keyboards, and a reverb bus. Let's say I wanted this to be exactly like this. I could file, save as a template, and in this command, let's take a look at this. This will give me all those tracks exactly how they are, the color coding, plugins, all that good stuff. You could save it as a file, or you could just put it in your template folder. So it'll be under the kind of the music subheading. And you could uncheck this, which means that it's not going to copy over all the audio files. So then when you open it up, it's going to make a template. Templates are very useful, save a lot of time. Let's say you're recording a rock band. You can have all of your tracks set up, color-coded. You open up a template and boom, all the inputs are correct. All the tracks are named. Tracks are color-coded. If you do want files in there, you can have that too, but let's say you have certain plugins. Let's say you have certain headphone mixes. All that good stuff is part of the template. So, but it's not part of the save copying. Save copy is something totally different, so you should understand that. Next one. When creating a Pro Tools document, how can you enable your work to be accessed from anywhere with an internet connection? That's a real simple one. It's a Pro Tools project. It's not a session. The session is just locally stored on your hard drive. A project is cloud-based. Which of the following can you use to create a new Pro Tools project document with cloud backup, the dashboard? I think we had that one before, right there. So I'm going to delete that one. We don't need that one. Let's get rid of it. Okay. Okay, tab the transient. This is a great feature. I love this feature. It works great on percussive transient. So I'm going to zoom into this drum track here and solo it just to show you what's going on. Here's a little drum beat. So tab the transient is right here, as you can see. What it does when it's turned on, I can click into my drum track and I can tab to the drum transient. Let's zoom in even more. So here's the kick right there. Let's say I wanted to select to the next kick. I'm just tabbing over, holding down shift. So I can select a area based on the transient. So transients, if you didn't know, are these bursts of amplitude that are very apparent in percussive material. Not so apparent in more sustained, such as keyboard sounds, like this mellotron right here. It doesn't have very clear transients, right? So it's harder to tab in a meaningful way because it's more sustained. Whereas this drum track here, I can tab very easily to every single distinct transient burst of amplitude. When tab the transient is turned off, let's look at our audio clips here. So I think I have some clips I separated here. I was bouncing this out. So I've got these clips here, and look, notice my cursor up here. When I mark in to this track, you can see that little arrow. It may not be so clear to see where I'm marking in with my mouse now, but when tab the transient is turned off, all it does is that it goes, let me zoom in here a little bit. It just goes to the next clip boundary right here, tab. If I option tab, I go back. Tab goes forward. I'm marking here. It just goes to the clip boundary. So, I mean, if I had this chopped up here, let me just chop up this one a bunch. It's just going to go, I'm going to tab over now. It goes right here, goes right here, goes right there. You can see where it's going. Goes right here, right? So that's what tab the transient turned off. Now let's turn it back on. Tab the transient turned on, and you guessed it. What's it going to do? It is going to now tab. Let me just take the same example here. This is just one of the guitar tracks. So now it's not going to jump to the clip boundary right here. When it's off, it's going to tab. I'm zoomed way out, so I got to zoom in here to see. It's going to tab to the guitar transients. That's me playing guitar, by the way. Yes, I'm a shredder. I admit. Okay, that's tab the transient. You can import QuickTime and Avid MXF video files. This is true. So these are two video file formats. QuickTime, that's like a MOV. It's a Apple-based video codec. And Avid MXF video. This is a very strange question. So Avid has a certain video codec, MXF. There's also another one I want to mention here, as well as DNxHD. I think I got that right. Maybe there's an underscore in there, something like that. This is another video format. So Avid works great with QuickTime Movies or Avid DNxHD. These are changing, so by the time I make this video, it might change again. But there are only certain video formats that are supported in Pro Tools. What is the universe window? I'm not a big fan of the universe window. I just don't use it, but it is right up here. Based upon how I'm zoomed in, it's this little window that gives me a kind of a how shall I say it? A miniature display of the entire Pro Tools session. So when I go around here, you can see what it's doing. How do we view it? Usually view, anything that's a window, view, and where is it hiding here? I think it's under other displays. I'm just going from memory here. Window, other displays, universe, there it is, and let's take it away. I usually have it off, but I guess it was on view, other displays, universe, and there it is right here, and we know what it does. So it doesn't manage, this question's kind of confusing. It doesn't manage I/O. It has nothing to do with plugins. It's just a miniature display of your entire Pro Tools edit window, right? You can even see like little mini markers up here. where the locations are, memory locations, and the audio clip. See how there's that little break right here? And it will scale to your zoom. As you can see, if I zoom in, then it gets smaller and smaller, that little window. If I zoom out, it gets larger and larger. That's the universe window. Pretty basic. It doesn't have anything to do with I/O, plugins, where your stuff is stored. It's just a visual display. Maybe I'll put that down here. It's a miniature visual display of the edit window. And it's good if I slow down and type that, because it gives us a little pause, because I'm kind of going a little bit faster than usual, just to kind of not make this make it a short and concise video. So one other tip I want to put in here is as well, is it an option? I probably already have this in here, but I'm going to write it again. Is it an option, a window, and there's one more. Is it an option or a window? Let's just put that. Because you may get questions that are like, oh, what menu is the loop playback under? Well, is loop playback a window in itself? Not really. Is it a file? No. Is it an option? Yeah, it's an option. Whereas the window, let's say showing the inserts or the I/O, is that a window? Or sorry, is it a view? That's the third one. Not file, it's a view. So is something you just want to see or not see, or is it an outright window in itself? So look at all the window stuff here. So you might have what might, like disk usage. These are kind of useful. Color palette's useful if you want to change the colors of things. But there's not a lot in the window. Maybe the MIDI editor. Those are the biggest thing. MIDI editor, score editor. We'll get into that in a minute here with some MIDI. But the view just hides and shows things. Options is like going to turn on different features like loop playback. That's a very useful one that you should know about, loop playback. And another one in here that's very important, edit window scrolling. I prefer page. That's a very useful one. Okay. That's a great way. Option, window, or view is a great question to ask yourself to parse some of these difficult questions. Okay. How many ticks are in a quarter note? Okay, what is a tick? Besides going in the woods and getting it stuck in your body. No, it's not that at all. A tick is a numeric number for MIDI notes. It's based on the MIDI protocol. It's based on 960 ticks. And it's like, why is that? Okay, why do we know that? Well, it is sort of random and detailed, but it is in the test. But I want to just mention this, ticks versus samples. So this is just a way, I don't need to get so into it, but ticks versus samples. Ticks are more MIDI based and instrument based. Samples are more audiophile based. And it's a property of the track. And let's look at this. I'm just going to make an instrument track here. Let's make an instrument track. Just to compare and contrast this. And I'm going to zoom in here because it's very hard to see. It's very detailed. It's one of these little interface things. So I have my instrument track here. I don't have anything on it. It doesn't really matter. And look at this right here. Time-based selector ticks. So I can just choose samples or ticks. So the little green metronome is a tick. Tick, tick, tick. The other one is samples. So this is an audio track. It has there's a bass DI on here. And that is in samples. And so what that means, it's a time property of the track. And in a nutshell, ticks versus samples, ticks are for MIDI notes, like this instrument track here. So what that means is that the MIDI notes are going to respond to tempo changes. Like if you change the tempo, the notes will get faster or slower. The notes will respond to quantize, when you quantize the MIDI, which is like rhythmic correction. If the track is in samples, then it will ignore the tempo changes. It'll ignore quantize. So I'll just put a little instrument in there. That's what ticks versus samples. You should know that. And there's 960 ticks per quarter note. And so it's sort of a random number, but I could get more into it. But basically, let me just go into grid mode here, and I'm going to set the grid to bars and beats. And it's totally not, we recorded this session without a tempo, but I just set my grid mode. Grid is at a quarter note. I'm going to zoom way in here just to get to a quarter note. And just notice my time counter here. My time counter, and let's change the time value here to bars and beats. It'll have nothing to do with the music here, but you can at least see now I'm on measure. Oops, I'm still on minutes and seconds. Let's go to bars and beats. Oh, it is on bars and beats. There we go. Bars and beats. There we go. Now I'm in bars and beats. Okay, thank you. So I'm at measure 786, beat 1, no divisions of the beat. This is the ticks portion right here. I'm looking up here. That's the ticks. It's getting a little bit detailed, but I want to go in a little bit more depth to the ticks. Now I'm 786 measure, beat 2, beat 3, beat 4, 787, right? So let's say I quantize my grid to eighth notes, right? We've all done this. So let's say I go in the middle part. There's 960 of these ticks here per quarter note, but let's say I go in the middle. What do you think it's going to be? What's 1/2 of 960 of this? This is 960 little measurements. If I go in the middle, half of 960 is 480. Watch this right here. So I'm subdividing that. Boom, 480. Okay, let's do it again. Let's make my grid a 16th note. Zoom in here so you can see what I'm doing. Again, on the downbeat, it's 0 because that's the downbeat. Halfway is going to be 480. What's 1/2 of 480? It's going to be 240. 240, 480. 480 plus 240 would be 6. No, it would be 720. Yeah, 720. Boom. So this is just subdividing the ticks in a quarter note in 16th notes. And you can keep on doing this experiment. I just wanted to give you a little demo of what ticks are. How many markers can you have in a session? 999. It's a silly question, but they just make you aware of the limits. Markers, if you didn't know, are memory locations. I can set them by marking in wherever and hitting enter. Marking into the session, just hitting enter on the number pad. I've got a full-size keyboard here. Or I just set location there on the downbeat that I heard. So you can set them in real time as it's playing back as well. Okay. Categorize. Okay, where are we here? 999 markers. I just showed you what a marker is. And if you didn't know, I can move the markers around. This one I just got rid of the name. But let's rename it over here. I can just double click on it. I can call it blah. So I can rename any marker. I can move them around. Here's the memory locations, which are involved markers. They're kind of synonymous with markers. Command 5 on the number pad will bring that up. If I don't like my blah marker, I can just drag it off and just trash it. Or you could right click. I think you might be able to, I just drag them off there, so I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't want to get too into it. The blank window lets you view, edit, arrange, and print MIDI data as music notation score editor. Well, that would be the score editor. And let's get into that a little bit. So, I'm just going to play a little bit of, is my keyboard hooked up here? Let's record enable this. There we go. Okay. Just going to record some MIDI notes. Whatever. I'm just playing some chords there. Just get some MIDI notes here. So I brought up the MIDI editor window. I did it so fast because I'm a Pro Tools jock. But here's my chord progression. And I could, because it's a window MIDI editor was control equal. If you're on a PC, it's going to be Windows equal. And it brings up this window. And I'm just trying to see where my MIDI information is here. It's got to zoom out or zoom out. Okay, it looks like some notes are right here. That's where it is. Okay, so I got my MIDI notes here. Here's the MIDI editor. The score editor is going to show us then right here. Control option equal. It'll show music notation, and this is like measure 700, so I probably should have done it at the beginning, but there is my chords. And I wasn't doing it to a click. If I did it to a click, it'd be a little bit more in time. But this is the score editor, Windows score editor. It shows music notation. I don't use that often. If I'm going to use music notation, I'd probably go into Sibelius or Finale or something like that to do a real score. So this is kind of limited, but it gives you basic notation capabilities if you want that. Ways to view MIDI data in Pro Tools. The notes in the edit window, clip view in the edit window, notation view in the MIDI editor or score editor. So what does this mean here? It's like, how do you view MIDI data? It's in the most broad sense of MIDI data. So here's my MIDI clip. I'm going to zoom out, and let's move that to the beginning, because I know I was way at the beginning of the way in measure 700 land. But so this is a clip. This is MIDI data. I could duplicate this clip, chop it up, do whatever I want. This is MIDI data. This is the clip view. So boom, clips view in the edit window. I'm just demoing that one. Notes in the edit window. Okay, there is also a notes view right here. Clips. How did I do that? Click on the clips. It's just like the view, just like we're viewing volume automation or waveform or volume. Here I'm going to go to notes view. This is also MIDI data, but it's more MIDI notes. I don't use this, but prior to Pro Tools 8, it's like the MIDI editor, right? Notes in the edit window. That's what I just showed you right there. These are notes. I can move these chords around. It's a little bit awkward in this, so I just don't use this anymore, to be honest. But let's say that's a little bit too low. I could transpose it down. I just totally edited the MIDI data. That was in the notes view again. I could do the same thing with clips view. And then we know our key command, I think it's just control equal or Windows key equal on a PC, and I bring up the MIDI editor. So this looks kind of funky here. So let us thicken the notes here. Where is that view here? There's another way to get the horizontal zoom, and I'm spacing it out right now. I think it's, there we go. That's my preferred way to kind of see the notes. So they're kind of nice and big. There we go. Cool. Three main tools: selector, grabber, and trimmer. And we know what those are if we've been using Pro Tools. Here's the three main tools: trim tool, selector tool, grabber tool, and I always like to have the smart tool on, which is this little bar above them, which contextually will go between these three tools. But for this test, you don't even need to know that. So that's too much information. So, but it's very useful. Ooh, looks like this is, we already had this question. I can delete that one. Maximum number of memory locations, but it's good to review. Same thing as markers or memory locations. I use those interchangeably. Okay, what connection type can be used for digital transfers? So these are two types of digital transfers that would appear on some interfaces. The SPDIF or the AES EBU. And here's what they stand for: Sony Philips Digital Interconnect Format, Audio Engineer Society, European Broadcast Union. Yeah, that might be a question. How can you set all tracks in your session to the same height? In Mac, hold down Option while selecting the track height from the track height selector. Let's do it. So let's make them all very small here. Here's the track height selector, this little thing right here or right here. So I'm going to hold down Option and click on this. I'm going to make them medium, small. I can also hold down that option and then I can click and drag to have them do that. That's one way to do it as well. And so I really like this option command. It's kind of like the magic key command. I can solo everything. I can mute everything. I'm holding it down now. I can select everything. I can deselect everything. I could add an EQ plugin. I won't do that because I don't want to mess up my little mixer. Actually, this is actually a good little hack here. I'm going to save as, because I don't want to mess up my mix here, I'm just going to save it as PT test, right? So I just saved a new session here, a session name, so I'm not messing up my previous mixing one, even though I did a really fast mix on this. But that's a great just saving as to if you want to just demo something or try something out and you want to be able to step back. Okay, cool. So there are two types of Pro Tools right now. Pro Tools, just regular Pro Tools, and Pro Tools Ultimate. So regular Pro Tools, what am I running on this computer? It's kind of always confusing. I'm running Pro Tools Ultimate, which means it's the full featured Pro Tools. Sometimes that used to be called Pro Tools HD. If you're running a real Pro Tools HD, you'll have specialized hardware with DSP cards, which means digital signal processing. So Avid has a new interface for this called Carbon is another one that is out. That's the most contemporary one. But you can still get the Pro Tools HDIO. You're good. I'm going to mention that. Pro Tools Carbon is an interface. HDIO. I worked extensively with that interface. So these will have the DSP chip on there. Actually, do they? They may not. I think Carbon does. You can actually have an HDIO system technically without DSP, I think. It's just the interface. But if you had an HDX card, HDX is another type of card that would have this DSP. So it would offload the processing power of plugins and other features of the audio tracks, such as sample rate, high sample rates, and things like that, to these high-powered chips, so you don't have to rely on your computer's processing power. Whereas regular Pro Tools is native host-based, which means it uses the CPU of your computer, like my MacBook Pro here, and the computer RAM. Regular Pro Tools is affected by the hardware buffer size. And that's a new term, so let's take a look at that. Setup, playback engine, and here is the hardware buffer size. Let's just talk about that a little bit. So this is kind of nerdy and complicated to explain this. This is a setting under the playback engine where you choose your audio interface. I'm using my Universal Audio Thunderbolt in this case. But the hardware buffer size is the amount of time in samples that you allow Pro Tools to kind of crunch numbers. So it's like a little buffer, a bit of time that you give Pro Tools to crunch numbers. So as you increase the size, you'll hear a little bit of latency in the recording. How much latency, you might ask? Well, exactly this many samples. So if I'm running 48K, you'll hear about 1/50th of a second, or what would that be, about 20 milliseconds of delay. So it is actually sort of an audible delay. You'll hear like a little bit of an echo. So this allows Pro Tools to crunch numbers more, like to run more plugins and things like that. So here are some other things here. So actually I would want to, if I'm not using video, I'd take that out because that just eats up RAM. So I don't want to get, you might see this playback engine and hardware buffer size in a question. So I wanted to talk about that. So this is a very straightforward one. Default meter and key signature for a session. Meter is 4/4, 4 beats per measure. Quarter note gets the beat, that's what that means. C major, most standard key signature, all white keys, and 120 beats per minute. So this should be meter, key signature. Let me edit my notes here. Key signature, as well as and beats per minute. So let's check that out. So I just kind of opened up this session and started recording. Check it out. My beats per minute, my tempo is 120, as I said, and my key signature is not shown. I usually don't see it, but C major, that's what the default is. And what was the last one? The meter. Boom. Let's show that. 4/4. And let's look at those, stare at those. Boom, boom, boom. Okay? Very good, very good. Dynamic plugin processing allows Avid audio plugins offline under some conditions. That's true. So what is dynamic plugin processing? Well, I think it may be under here. Yes, it's right there. Oh, my memory serves me correctly. So as I understand it, that's good to leave on, because let's say I've got like a really memory intensive plugin or like a MIDI plugin or something, and then there's a section of a song right here where there's nothing going on. There's no audio signal at all. It's like dead silent. I don't want that plugin to take up any information. So for example, MIDI plugins can be very like CPU intensive, but let's say there's no MIDI data. Let's say that plugin isn't even doing anything. So Pro Tools will, under certain conditions, take that plugin offline. It's not even making any sound. It's not processing any audio. So it just kind of cuts it off. Okay, moving right along. 6 dB of dynamic range per bit. So this is kind of a multiplier. This is kind of a rule of digital audio. So we know about bit depth. For example, you never want to use 16-bit unless you're making a CD. But otherwise, you always want it to be 24-bit or 32-bit float. It's much better. But this dynamic, this bit depth or resolution will create the dynamic range in a sense. So 16-bit will give you 96 dB in theory of dynamic range from the quietest sound to be recorded to the loudest sound to be recorded. That's quite a dynamic range. It's already very good. 24-bit will give you 144 dB. And you get that by taking the number of bits. 24 times 6 will give you 144. 16-bit, 16 times 6 will give you 96 dB. Great. So here's another repeat question. We already went over the video stuff. Avid Video Engine supports playback of video with a wide range of Avid MXF video, including DNX HD. I put an underscore in there before, but that's what that is. Nudging used by the plus and minus on the number pad. Yes, nudging. Let's say I want to nudge this. Nudge value is set up here, right below the grid value. Let's just make it something very obvious here. I'm going to set it to 1 second here. I'm a little bit off the screen there, but I'm going to set it to 1 second so it's very obvious. I highlight my clip, and I just can hit plus, and look how I'm nudging that backwards and forward. I can also like mark in, and it should nudge my selector backward and forward. It can be useful if I, very powerful. I hold on. Actually, it doesn't work with shift. That's more tab. But I could move things around like this. I can nudge them, or I could just step back. It's actually very useful as well to do very precise alignment things of like sound effects or MIDI notes, things like that. If you want to just move something by a very small increment and you don't want to wear out your hand with the mouse, that's what nudge is. I'm using plus and minus on the number pad. I believe also nudge works with a few more key commands, which I think is greater than or less than. That works well as well. And that's all I want to say about that right now. So real-time plugin formats supported by Pro Tools, AAX, Avid Audio Extension. So when you buy plugins from a third-party manufacturer, if they run in Pro Tools, they will be AAX. So that's what it's called. That stands for Avid Audio Extension. So all these plugins that are installed here, if I expand my inserts, all these plugins are AAX. So all my reverbs, if I open up any of these, they're all AAX plugins. That's what they need. So you can see right here AAX and this plugin. It's listed right there. That's I think a native instrument reverb or something. But that's what AAX means. That's basically the plugin format for Pro Tools. Frequency range of human hearing, 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. And I'm going to demo this real quick. I'm going to use a signal generator. I think it has to be a mono auxiliary track, just to put a signal generator in there so you can hear this. Plug in other signal generator. Where are you? Right here. And we'll hear a little beep. So what is 20 hertz? It's below what you can hear. So my subwoofer is getting that now. So there's 20 hertz. And it goes up to 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. I just wanted to show you that with the signal generator with an aux input track, and a signal generator plugin. That's the range of human hearing. You should know that. Frequency equals pitch. So frequency in the sense of an EQ. So let me show you. Here's an EQ. Again, 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. That's the range of human hearing. That's commonly accepted. And all these frequencies here that we're EQing out, that here I'm just high passing something. I think it's just a reverb bus that I'm high passing. I'm rolling off these low frequencies. So the question is, we use frequencies in EQ all the time to kind of boost and cut frequencies, take things away, accentuate things. And in terms of pitch, this signal generator here, we also saw frequencies. So when there's a regular vibration of the air at a certain frequency, that equals pitch. You might have heard of A440. A440, for example. That's a very common one, okay? And let's try to get through these. Let's see, almost done here. Okay, I always miss the automation mode. Oh, unfortunately, I'm gonna make this another module here. So, touch, latch, and write allow you to record volume changes in real time. Read and off, we'll just turn it off. We'll read it back or turn it off so it won't move the fader. So let's demo that real quick here. Back to Pro Tools. Okay, so let's say I want to, I don't know, I'm gonna mark in here, solo here, and I want to do a fade in of one of these tracks. So I want to fade in this track right here, and I want to automate the volume. Okay, simple. So I could draw in the volume automation here, right? I could just like, you know, go in here with the grabber and put in some breakpoints and do something like that and get my fade, of course. It's kind of a long fade. Let's make the start right here. So I could do that, but there's another way to do this, which is with automation. So where it says read and off right here, I'm going to use latch mode. And what I'm going to do is make my mix window small here so you can see what I'm doing. So here's my fader that corresponds to this track right here, and I put it in latch mode. So I'm going to play it back, and you can see me manually moving my mouse. Right? So I'm recording my fader movement. Make sense? Cool, and when I let it go, it just stays there in latch mode. And let's just clean that all out of there and try that one more time. And I'm going to start it from here. And now I'm going to put it in read mode. Now read, sorry, not read, touch mode, just to show you the difference. When I play this back, and I let go, it's going to go back to wherever this line was previously. Oops, I made a selection there. Let's play it again. So moving it up. And if I let go, it goes back to. So that's read mode. Let's do latch mode here again, just to demo these two different ones. So I really only use touch and latch. Let's do this one more time. Play it again. I'm turning it fade down. I let go, and it stays wherever I leave my mouse. When I stop setting, so it gouges out a little bit of automation there. So that's what touch and latch will do. Write mode, touch and latch. Touch, latch, and write. Oh, I didn't do write, but write's the most destructive one, and here's why. So if I mark into this and move my fader a little bit, and I put it in write mode, I'm not touching anything, right? And I hit play, and look it's overwriting all my automation data. That's why I never use write. It's very dangerous. I just use touch and latch. See how that automatically wrote automation data without me moving anything. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are zoom presets. I don't use these that much, but up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is going to preset zoom settings that are triggering these buttons right here. Same thing as mousing them. That is zoom presets right there. Quickly zoom in out all tracks. Quickly zoom out to view all tracks. So I'm zoomed way in far. I don't know what I'm doing. I double click the zoom tool right here. Doink doink, and then every clip will be brought into view. Almost done here. So the waveform cache displays waveform information. I'm going to show you where the session is here. Documents, here's the session. This file right here is showing the visual display of my waveforms. So that's the waveform cache file. That's what that means. That may be a question. 1 minute of CD quality audio is 10 megabytes. So CD quality audio is 16-bit 44.1. So if you have 88.2, it'll be double that. This is stereo as well. So if you have a mono 16-bit 44.1, it's going to be 5 megabytes. So there might be a question related to this, and you have to kind of use your detective work by doubling the sample rate or making it mono or stereo. Stereo is going to be double mono. Stereo is 2 channels, mono is 1. So there's only 16 separate channels of MIDI that can be sent over one MIDI cable. That's based on the MIDI protocols. You should know that. Okay, link timeline and edit selection. Link timeline and edit selection options links the playback and edit cursors. Let me explain that quickly. So the default way you may know is if I make an edit selection that says this area up here, it'll be there. And likewise, if I select down here, it'll select on the edit window. So these are linked by default, but I'm going to unlink them right now. So that's the link right here, link timeline and edit selection. Let's unlink that. And now I can play back here while I can select over here. Notice how it's still playing back over here, even though I can select like somewhere else. Right? So that's when they're unlinked. So if I link them back, doink, and now it's going to go wherever I'm selecting. Right? So, yeah. Okay. Almost done here. In order to use loop playback, the selection must be at least half a second or 500 milliseconds. That's just how it works. I don't even need to demo it. But loop playback, maybe I will demo it. One last thing here. And let me just show you. I'm going to zoom in here. Let's zoom in. Zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. Let's go back to waveform view. Sure. And let's put my grid to minutes and seconds. And 500 let's use 100 milliseconds. And I'm just going to zoom way in. And select 500 milliseconds. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think it needs to be actually 600 milliseconds. My selection here, let's go to my time here. Change my time value. Minutes and seconds. Oops. There we go. How long is that? 600 milliseconds. Interesting. I think it needs to be actually at least a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, is loop playback? Here, I gotta turn off punch record. Quick punch, take that off. Normal record. Oh, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's do 400 milliseconds. See, it won't loop then. So that's all that says. So it has to be 500 milliseconds in order to loop. Okay, the difference between relative and absolute grid. So let's just make a little chunk right here. It doesn't matter that I'm in minutes and seconds. It doesn't really matter at all. I'm just going to select this. I'm going to separate it. So if I'm in, let me just zoom in here to demo this. So if I'm in regular grid mode, it just snaps to the grid boundaries, right? That's absolute grid. Command click will, see how I just moved off the grid boundary a little bit? That's with command, it'll temporarily suspend the grid mode. If I go to relative grid now look at this. This is a little bit behind the beat here. A little bit behind the, it's a little bit behind my grid boundaries, you can see. So when I'm in a relative grid, it will offset. See how it should be right there, but in a relative grid, it preserves the offset of your MIDI note or your audio clip relative to where it is on the grid boundary. So absolute, just demo that again because it's kind of a strange concept. So here's absolute. It goes right on the grid boundary, right? Relative, I'm using command just to kind of make it a little bit behind the beat so you can see it. See how it's a little bit behind the beat? In relative grid, see how it preserves that offset. So I demoed that twice. That's probably good enough. Describe it here. Reverse the direction of the trim tool, option key. So here's the trim tool. I can trim that out. But let's say I want to trim I don't want to trim that way. Let's go back to slip mode. It's a little bit easier. If I hold down Option key, it will trim out the other way. See how it does that? Option, yes. Okay, I gotta get through this really fast. This video is gonna be really long. The chords ruler can allow you to add chord symbols to the session. True. Let's say I want to view the chords here. Drop down chords. Great, and I can just kind of hit plus right there, and C major. Boom, there it is right there. Let's do another chord. Boom, and I want to do C minor. There it is right there. So I can put chords in that way. Yes. Pro Tools supports recording at sample rates up to 192K. Absolutely true. Yes, true. That's about as high as it goes. Whole files are bolded and subset clips are not. Okay, cool. What does that mean? So here is a bold file. That means it's a whole recorded audio file, and these are edits of that. So these are subset clips, the ones that are not bold. Let me zoom in. These are whole files, and these non-bold ones are subset clips. So you may have a question like that that goes into that. Pro Tools supports up to 64 levels of undo. Yes, true. True. Whole files are bold and subset. Went over that. To make the Workspace browser always copy on import setup preferences. I'm not even sure if this is on there, but I think it's just a useful thing there. And this last question here, snap to grid, shift selects grid modes. You can add hybrid modes with grid, like slip grid. I think I'm just saying here that if you hold down the command key, if you're on a Mac, it'll bypass the grid options. So for example, let's go back into grid here. Let's go back into absolute grid, and it's snapping. If I hold down command or control on a PC, it will temporarily go into slip mode. All right, that's enough of this review. I hope you can slow me down and pause it and try some of these things out. The best way to go through this is just to try it out on your own. All right.